Welcome to Working with Unrepresented Buyers. First, you'll log into Form Simplicity. There's two forms you're going to need. The first form is the agency disclosure and acknowledgement form. And the second form is the self-representation form. Self-representation agency confirmation. So, and then of course, if you have a landlord listing, you can have a tenant fill this out as well. So that's just something to be aware of. So situations in which you may be working with a self-represented buyer include the buyer is knowledgeable and just asks you. Typically, they're going to try to get a price reduction because they're going to try to get you to reduce your commission. Try not to offer that. Try not to budge. Just write their offer, present it to the seller, and see how the seller responds. I do not advocate for you negotiating your commission, regardless of how you dice it, whether you're officially a dual agent or they're representing themselves. It's just as much work. So why should you get paid less for working more? That just doesn't make sense to me. So also, this is the solution to those of you that are builders, married to builders, have ownership in a company, or maybe selling your own property. At eXp Realty, we're not allowed to be all three parties. So we can't be the seller and then representing the seller and representing the buyer. Policy does not cover that, and so it's not allowed per eXp Realty policies and procedures.
Another time unrepresented buyers in this paperwork would come in handy is if you're working with a seller and they've already told you they do not want you to be a dual agent. This is a way for you to get the whole commission and not represent the buyer.
So you'll go to agency disclosure and acknowledgement. You will fill this out because we are the brokerage. And usually we're always appointed agency. In this case, will be self-representation. If not already in a written agency relationship with brokerage, partnership, or company may represent themselves in a transaction. If a buyer or owner elect to represent themselves in a transaction, it is the policy of the brokerage to treat that buyer or owner as a customer and not as a client. Clients are responsible for commission which may be owed as the terms and conditions of previously agreed contracts. If representing themselves, a self-representation, agency confirmation, and acknowledgement shall be completed. So the truth is this is used for sale by owners and for buyer self-representation. You can scroll down. This is where you would highlight to them, the duties of a real estate license to all parties in the transaction, whether you're a client or a customer. We will provide our services honestly and in good faith. We'll exercise reasonable skill and care. So we are required to disclose all materially adverse facts that we know, except for things that you already know, things that you should know or should see with your own eyes or any reasonably prudent person would see. Anything that's prohibited by law, like a stigmatized property type thing. And then, material adverse facts that are known to a person who conducts an inspection on half of the property. So this is just kind of a housekeeping thing. I like to put in here all of the businesses that eXp is affiliated with. So, for example, Silverline Title and Escrow, Moving Hub, America's Preferred Home Warranty, Currencies Direct. And then also, if you are representing your own or spouse's new construction or something, I would put that in there as well, just to cover yourself. So then you would print the name of the buyer, sign, but you would sign for seller's brokerage. Here I would type unrepresented. On all the documents you'll help them complete, if at any time it asks for a buyer broker signature or buyer agent signature, you're going to write unrepresented. You're still going to want to present the rest of our disclosures, such as wire fraud and affiliated business disclosures. So then you'll also need self-representation, agency confirmation, and acknowledgement. So this is the date of the offer, seller's name, buyer's name, property address. Your name / eXp Realty is the exclusive agent brokerage of their client. So your seller's name if it's an unrepresented buyer. And then you will check mark here. Customer elects to represent themselves. They understand no brokerage or licensee providing any assistance, advice, or representation to consumer. Licensees may provide ministerial acts to facilitate the transaction, but they're not responsible for any non-client decisions or actions. So if somebody says they want to be unrepresented, then they start asking you questions, you need to say, look, I do not mean to be rude. You declined my services. It's too late to change that. If you have these type of questions, you need to consult a lawyer. Then this is, again, an explanation of the duties of real estate licensees to all parties in the transaction. Duties of you to your client, another place to disclose all of those affiliated relationships we have. And then it says the minimum services we're providing to the client. So if a person decides to represent themselves or declines brokerage representation, this document shall provide written acknowledgement and confirmation to all licensees involved in the transaction. A person representing themselves should consult a lawyer for any advice or other representation. The customer, so the buyer would sign here, your client would sign here, you would sign here. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out